Hey, morning everybody. Good to see you. First, I want to thank Spec-First for hosting this and giving me the opportunity to tell you guys what we've been doing, and so that I can learn from you. I know I'm going to hook up with Victoria later to find out how she's implemented things in her organization. And letting us get together so we can discuss this stuff. So a little bit about me. This is a great picture, by the way. I love it. Yeah, when they said headshot, I mean, I gave them a headshot, dude. This is it. Yeah, I've been in quality for 30 years. Back in that day, they didn't have child labor laws or anything, so I started when I was like 4. So I've been doing this a long time. I've worked with a lot of different companies. Started off with Bosch, and then I've worked with Masonite and Home Depot, Newell Rubbermaid, and now I'm with Central Garden and Pet. Been implementing quality systems and new product development systems and continuous improvement systems for about the last 20 years. With that, I've seen the progression. Victoria knows this too. It's like, we started off in quality using paper. And everything was documented, everything was written down, everything was great. Then we progressed to something called Lotus Notes. It's awesome. Google that too, by the way. And then we've progressed into Excel, which is now our digital transformation. We've been moving forward from there, getting into what Matthew and everybody's been talking about is really trying to transform this, taking this stuff to that next level and getting it in there. So Victoria said I'm the quality director for Central Garden and Pet. We're about a $3.5 billion company. We've grown by acquisitions. So over the years, we've acquired and acquired and acquired and acquired and acquired. So we got 28 different business units, over 100 brands, and over 10,000 SKUs. All right. So our brands range from chemicals to do lawn and garden things, to pet products, Nylabone, Four Paws. You'll recognize some of those names. Amdro. People living in the Pacific Northwest will know Moss Out. So we do bird feed. We are the largest bird feed manufacturer in the country. KT in Pennington. We do seed. We do supplements for animals. We do dog toys, chew toys. So we've got just all kinds of stuff. And we're the largest aquarium manufacturer. We do live goods. We have live animals that we sell. We do fish. We do bushes and trees and annuals. So the breadth of our products is just stupid. So trying to manage that and do that is just, it's a daunting task. So the challenge for us is growing by acquisition. We've had, you bring in, and a lot of you guys have done this, where you buy companies and buy companies. They bring in legacy systems, and it's really, really, really hard to integrate those. So, with that, we've got a bunch of different business units, and they all run themselves. So we have everything from Excel to Word to doing things on SharePoint to Teams. We even have a PLM system. But it's just all over the place. So with the business impact of that is it drives me crazy, for one, because we got inconsistent data. We don't have anything, it's really hard. The business units run themselves, and they do a good job running. We've had, record quarters. But they do a good job, but with these inconsistent specs, you just really don't know what you got sometimes. Lack of documentation internally, that we can't transfer things from business unit to business unit. Even when we bring on a new one, it's really hard to get that data to them to say, okay, here's what we're doing from other business units that are similar to yours. Here's, can you take some of that and do some best practice sharing? And there's a whole lot of time spent putting data in, getting data out, which leads to some errors and things when you're launching products. And you don't want that. So fast forward, we got new leadership. You guys have been through this, but we've got a really good new CEO. He's been there about 2 years. He gets it. He sees it. He knows it. He's got a vision. He's not coming in and going, okay, here's my plan. Here's what we're doing. We're going to do it this year. Not happening. He's got a longer term plan, because some of our, we're a legacy company. We've got people in our company that have worked with us for 50 years. We've got some divisions that their average tenure is probably 35. So, you know, trying to change that mentality, daunting task. So the solution, here's what we're looking at. About 3.5 years ago, packaging manager found Spec-Right to manage his packaging specs. So being the good quality guy that I am, looked at his thing and said, oh, shoot, man, we can use that for quality. That's great. We can take all our quality documents and put them in there. So we basically kicked him to the curb, and one of my guys took over. He's a really aggressive engineer and very focused. So he took over and put specs in, and built that system up. The packaging guy was still trying to get packaging done, so we kind of helped him along and got that stuff in there. But anyway, not that, knocking packaging guys, but we started using this thing for specs, for quality, for putting our processes in, operations, doing everything like that. With the packaging, we're developing a common library across all of our divisions, all of our business units, so they can see who's using what package. I don't want to have 15 12 by 12 by 12 boxes in the company just because everybody's buying separate stuff. Leverage. The spec-first approach to quality. So what we're doing, being in the quality realm, we've got to have specifications. Everything, that's the base. Matthew's spoken, talks about this all the time. And I agree, specs are the base. So we got to have that. We need to have one spec. We don't need to be asking for a spec and then you get an email from somebody with an Excel file that's named copy of specification ABC. Not that that's ever happened to me. And I'm looking at it going, are you sure this is the latest one? Positive. They're like, yeah, it's awesome. So trying to get away from that, having that capability, and then having the capability to manage everything in our system, to know that we're going off of the latest spec. So, case study for us. So a change in suppliers really drove this journey that we're on. I hate using that word, but this journey we're on. Two suppliers came to us several years ago and said, we're getting out of the consumer market. We're gonna focus on our professional line. Like, okay. So I said, what's that entail? Well, it's about 68 SKUs that we had to resource. And with supplier agreements, we had about 3 months to do this. So fast forward, they were co-mans. So we were looking at it going, okay, we need to get all our specs, we need to get these things quoted. Being co-mans, now how many of you guys use co-mans? We may or may not have had the latest and greatest specs and operations and manufacturing processes and everything. So we started looking into that and it was like, holy moly, man, we don't even know what we're making. So we don't know how to do this. So it took us forever to pull this stuff together, and for one, I was like, I'm never doing this again. So we, started looking at this stuff and saying, I said, like, what do we need to do to get this stuff in? We started developing the specs, and then we found Spec-Right. So what we have is this thing, you see this thing called an easy button. We kind of generally named it that, so our procurement brethren can figure out what to do. They just click a button. And what it does is everything we have in Spec-Right, we have packaging specs, we have manufacturing specs, we have all the regulatory requirements, the quality testing, the formulas, the packaging, the TOPS diagrams, everything that's required is in there. You hit this button, generates a report, comes out, they can send that to a supplier and it's a one-stop shop of, here's what you need to make this thing. So we can quote this, we can send it out for, we can give it to the operations team. Anything we can do with it takes about 15 seconds, where before it would take us to pull a spec together. We'd have to go to S&OP, to procurement, to quality, to operations, probably forgetting somebody, maybe engineering, and get all that stuff. Maybe take a couple of weeks to get that thing together. So this is one of the benefits for us, and we know that it's right because it's in the system. If it's in the system, it's right. So with the reporting, we need reporting. So these things, we've got dashboards, kind of like everybody else. We can see what the status of things are, where we are, we're using, where we are from a quality standpoint, from corrective actions to supplier assessments to inspections, and a lot of different things that we're using these systems for. Because we're using Spec-Right for a lot of different stuff. We're using it not just for specification management. But from a quality aspect, we've worked with the Spec-Right team to develop a lot of different modules. So we take our specifications, we generate, we can do product inspections overseas. Our inspectors use their tablets to go in. The specs are in there, they can do that. They can go in and do their inspections. The system calculates all their AQLs and their acceptance. They can generate corrective actions from the inspection that go to the supplier. It's interactive with the supplier to fill out their 8D and report it back to us. We do supplier assessments that are scored with the supplier. We also are doing new product development, project management. We manage all of our ECRs and our deviations in the system. We manage all of our regulatory items. We deal with the FDA, the EPA, so we have to deal with every state on our chemical because the EPA stuff is all state registered. And then with some of our food stuff, it's international. So we have to manage all our registrations in there to know what's required when they're coming up due. We've got dashboards to show, okay, here's all your stuff that's coming up in the next 120 days, 90 days, just to keep those guys on task so they don't forget anything and forget to register our products. So with, when changing, this case study is more about changing suppliers. I talked about this a little earlier about going in and having to do all the specs, but this one is when we're looking at new suppliers, we do a supplier assessment. It's scored. We send basically where our suppliers are on as external users. We send them a notification. They go in and do their self-assessment. We look at it and say, yeah, that's very nice. You scored a 99. You are awesome. And then we say, well, we're going to go in and do our own inspection. So we score that, and they come up as a 60. We say, okay, yeah, so there's a little discrepancy. Here's the things that you need to fix. So we can generate corrective actions from that system. They answer those, get them back to us. We can reassess and determine what we want to do going forward. So we're doing a lot, like I said, inside the system. So with with our thing, we do a lot of procurement and regulatory. Everybody's accessing the same data. Again, it's this, what I preach to everybody is one source of truth. That's what we got in the company, and we're getting there. Everybody's starting to see this, that it's really, really easy to get these specs if they're on Spec-Right. It makes life easy. I know change is scary, and that's what we have to tell everybody. Change is scary, but change is good. So, just keep going with that. So it used to take days for everybody to pull data together. Victoria's seen it, and she mentioned it earlier about just having to stand in line. I never had to stand in line. But just being able to pull that information and being able to click buttons and not having to, procurement guys don't have to call me and say, okay, can I get a spec for this? It's like, just click the button, dude. So, we're doing that. It's like, yeah, I digress. But, so we're going that route. So, and then regulatory, they're working off of live specs to make sure that everybody has the same thing. Our operations team has access to them, so because all our manufacturing instructions in there, because we got some chemical processes that are pretty intricate where you have to make different things. So, going that route. Tracking the project registrations, I mentioned this earlier with our regulatory group. They track all of their registrations. We've got checklists by state, by product type, and they can go in and say, okay, here's what Arkansas needs for a fertilizer. So they have a checklist in this built in. And they can say, yes, here's all the stuff, and we put those documents in, we store them in Spec-Right, then they can submit their package. So, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, right? So, and then from procurement, we go in and, with this, what we're showing here is, one of our specifications for regulatory, and this is, just a screenshot of what they see when they go in. They're looking at what's required, and then if it's in process, and they can put a date and they can store it out there. During COVID process, everybody saw this. With our business, COVID, in all honesty, was really, really good for our business. We do lawn and garden, and we do pets. So when everybody had to stay at home, they found out they had a yard, one, and they found out they had a dog or a cat. Because they were at home and the dog would come up, and you've been on every Zoom call where the cat walks across and stuff like that. Yeah, so they found out, it's like, yeah, we need something to occupy those guys, or we can do our own yard work. So, we found out, with using Spec-Right that we had to add suppliers, we had to change some things because stuff was hard to get. So, it was very easy to do that in Spec-Right instead of emailing stuff back and forth. It was like people could go in, we could do the specs, we could find those and get things done. So, this just made it, again, that one source of truth where everybody knows what they have, where it is. If it's on the system, it's right. So, and with ours, with the way we've got our system set up, we've got one formula that goes into 15 different products. Because every retailer has to have their own size, shape, color. So, we've got one chemical that's in 15 different things. So, it just helps us when we can go in and change one formula. If we have to change a supplier or change a formula, we can change it in one spot, and that's it. It blows through the system. We don't have to worry about it. So, best practices, what we've learned. With Spec-Right, we've been working with these guys for 3.5 years, going on 4 now. Really good. I mean, we do what Victoria said, you line up what you want. We've developed 10 modules with them so far for quality. Packaging's here. We've got everything else that I mentioned before. We're using this whole platform and rolling it out to our organization. But you don't have to use the whole thing. And that's what I'm telling my business units is start small, put specs in. And you can branch out, you can start building, you can go from there. Because everything's built off the specs, so get those in. But even if you don't have your specs in, you can use the corrective action system, you can use the supplier assessment, you can use all this different stuff that's in there because you don't have to use the whole thing. Just get started, and that's what Victoria mentioned earlier. Just get started. You got to start somewhere. So you pick some business units where you can win, or pick an area where you can win, and show the rest of the organization what we did. Is we picked a couple of them and said, okay, and they're outperforming the others, and the guys are now, because everybody's competitive, they're looking at it going, dude, what are they doing? I want some of that. So it makes selling it a little easier. Trying to get that competitive nature going. It's like, yeah, if you start managing your specs and you're saving time on the back end because you don't have to run reports every month for your MBRs or quarterly for your QBRs or your yearly things because the dashboards are there. You don't have to run reports. Putting the data in is putting the data in. Whether you're putting it in Excel or whatever you're putting it in, doesn't take any more time to put it in Spec-Right. Just put it in there. Sometimes it's quicker. But on the back end, huge time savings. Mention that inspection. Inspection reporting would take the inspectors 4 to 6 hours to compile a report. Now they're doing it while they're doing it. So there is no time to compile a report. It's just there and it's available. So that's it for me. Hope you guys get a brief, had a high level deal of how we're using it and what we're doing. Again, we're not just using it for specs and packaging, we're using it for everything. So if you've got any questions, because my time is up, catch me, I'll be around. Be happy to talk to you about it, and believe me, I want to talk to other people about what they're doing. Thank you.